Now, one thing that Bob Iger, the new Disney CEO, is aiming to really shift around and change over at Lucasfilm is by focusing more so on Star Wars movies instead of primarily just Star Wars TV shows on Disney+, something that Chapek wanted to do in the very beginning and just do it spread out. Now Iger wants to actually jump in on this and rapidly kind of bring this back into the Star Wars world, essentially. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future Star Wars updates. Also, by the way, guys, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you also very much for the kind support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, one thing about Bob Iger is that he really has been, one of the CEOs of Disney that has been highly criticized, especially by Star Wars fans, including myself. Definitely during the sequel trilogy era, because he is the guy that allowed Kathleen Kennedy to do exactly what she wanted to do in the franchise. And moving to where we are today, it is a very interesting point in time because there are a lot of changes coming our way for Star Wars. Now, given that Celebration is looming, alright, we got some months ahead of us before Celebration comes out, but it will be at that event in which we get a handful of new announcements for the franchise that's really going to propel the Star Wars world in a different path, essentially. So, moving to where we are also is that Iger wants to do pretty much the unthinkable for the fandom, to really win some of the fans back. There were a lot of fans that walked away from the sequel trilogy movies and really, practically made an oath that they would never watch anything Star Wars again after what they saw. So, that brings us to, of course, what Lucasfilm is currently planning out for the future of Star Wars films, one of which is a particular new Star Wars trilogy that will be treated as a new sequel trilogy in a sense. However, on top of this, with Kathleen Kennedy actively developing shows like Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, as of now, Lucasfilm is currently developing a series of new shows and even films under Iger's new leadership. He wanted to transition back to focusing on movies again as the primary source of Star Wars content. One big plan that Lucasfilm has in store for the fans is by creating new sequel trilogy movies for the fandom. As of now, Lucasfilm's creatives, of course, and the Disney board is moving ahead with a Mandalorian trilogy that will be slated for theaters and will also be treated as the continuation of the Skywalker saga that will involve FAVREAU, Filoni, and Lucas along with other main creators. Now, the path that they are about to take for these new movies is by creating the Heir to the Empire stories from the books into the form of live action in different ways while staying accurate in other segments. Now, let me just pause here. Now, for those of you that don't know much about Heir to the Empire, this was basically the original sequel trilogy during Legends, and it was something that a lot of fans have been asking for to be made in live action for years, that never came out to be. So this is something, by the way, that Favreau and Filoni as well as Lucas are going to be involved in, and the Disney board is very excited about this plan to really kind of move forward with this Mandalorian trilogy that's also going to be treated as a new sequel trilogy, as well as the continuation of the Skywalker saga. Now, in case you guys don't know, Heir to the Empire, the main villain in that, of course, or villains, I should say, is Jorah C'baoth and Grand Admiral Thrawn. And that is indeed going to be their new focus on these new movies, by focusing on those two villains. Now, we're going to go over Jorah C'baoth. Now, Lucasfilm, alright, is focusing on Jorah being one of the new main villains along with Grand Admiral Thrawn as another villain as the big bad as well in these new movies that will receive a very high budget. Now, in Legends, Jorah C'baoth was a mad clone of a dead Jedi who eventually was able to do some genetic experiments that would pose a threat against the Rebellion and the New Republic. These new films are also planned to heavily feature Luke, Ahsoka, and Ezra as the new trio in the Star Wars movies. So, let me pause here quick for a second. You can see that what they are doing now is they're trying to stay accurate, but also changing things around. Obviously, in Heir to the Empire, there was no Ahsoka, there was no Ezra Bridger. It was just, original trilogy characters mainly. Now, the thing about this too is that what they are also set out to do is that these movies that they are currently planning are going to be slated for theaters. Chapek wanted them to only be used for Disney Plus, and to be honest, I think that Bob Iger made the correct move here. As much as I criticize the guy, and I'm not a fan of him too much, I think that this was a good business move. You know, regardless, I think that when you look at something like this, when you're putting new movies out, it's best to focus on the theaters because you want something more broad, something very high budget, something that is going to cater to the general audience, you know, the common moviegoers, so to speak, that's going to really, you know, steer things in the right path for Star Wars. Now, everything related to Grand Admiral Thrawn and Ezra Bridger being the two new characters, as well as Jor's Kaboth in, you know, being the third one, you can see where they're trying to go with this. Now, they are treating Luke, Ahsoka, and Ezra as the new trio, kind of like how Finn, Poe, and Rey were, and kind of also like how Luke, Han, and Leia were in the originals, just as Anakin, Padme, and Kenobi were in the prequels. So, you're always going to have a trio, so to speak. That's like a format. Moving on. Now, of course, they are planning on including a young Ben Solo in the movies as well as the Knights of Ren as a side thing, and Favreau and Filoni will be focusing mainly on Legends lore with a hint of other sequel trilogy lore being thrown in from the comics. So I think that's a smart move too. They're taking sequel trilogy lore from the comics and putting it into these new Star Wars movies. So, if you guys ever actually read the Rise of Kylo Ren comics, in there, you have the Knights of Ren. You also have just Ren, the original villain, just Ren. That's how Kylo got his name, Kylo Ren. Ren was basically a Force-sensitive dark side user that had a lightsaber that was the leader of the Knights before Ben Solo killed him. So he's going to be also another focus on the side in these new movies that Disney now has a rough idea of exactly what they want to do with the films. Now, they are going to make an official announcement about these new movies by holiday season of 2023, so keep your eyes open for that. It will be a very big moment for Star Wars fans. The internet is going to go wild, and I think that at the end of the day, we're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel for the first time in a very long time. Now, obviously you can see that John and Dave are really using these Star Wars TV shows basically as a setup for these new Star Wars movies in a sense. You know, you can see how they're kind of treating it now. And in the beginning, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to focus on movies eventually based on The Mandalorian. And Disney put that on hold. They said it's too early to even think about that 2 years ago. And here we are, 2 years later, and it is moving forward. I think, you know, Disney finally realizes that they got to get back in the theaters. They got to get these things back to, you know, getting out to the common moviegoer, creating new fans out there, getting those repeat viewings, you know, those repeat ticket sales. It makes a lot more money, let's be honest, than a subscription-based service. It's true. So overall, guys, you know, drop a comment below. Let me know what you guys have to say about all of this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.